Welcome to the Hustle Report by Jason Malone, presented by Clicks Media.
All right, let's get right into it. So in the wake of everything that has happened with Silicon Valley Bank, it just brought to my attention all of the issues that could come about when you are running your company and you have exposure to third parties that might not be doing business right, decide to do some shadiness around the relationship that you have with them, or have an impact out of something that has absolutely nothing to do with your own business. I think in the case of Silicon Valley Bank, the majority of the customers had deposits that were over the FDIC threshold of $250,000. So if you think about it, that is a ton of businesses that had significant cash exposure to Silicon Valley Bank. And depending on what the regulators decide, these companies, the founders of these companies, are going to be in significant distress, in my opinion, because they're going to have issues meeting their payroll, paying on their account payables, things like that, things that they were relying on Silicon Valley Bank to provide a service for them for, right? And so, now you have this counterparty risk, basically, for a business that you had no control over. You're using them for a service. In this case, it was a bank. And now your business is at risk because of the risk that another business took. So your business was doing everything that you probably had promised to your investors. You weren't taking risk that your business shouldn't have been taking. However, all of a sudden, you're in a very sticky situation because a counterparty has now impacted your business. And the interesting thing here is it just doesn't happen with a bank, right? I've been in numerous instances where my business was impacted because of something that a counterparty did. So it just kind of puts it in perspective as to when you're running a business, you really have to keep your head on a swivel. You have to make sure that you diversify your risk, especially when it comes to your cash. Diversify your risk such that if anything were to happen, you're not put in a situation where now you can no longer conduct business because of the negative impact of somebody that you were trading with. This can be for one of your suppliers. This can be your shipping partner, somebody that was your packaging partner. You just have to think about your vendors, those that you do business or those that provide a service for your business. If there was any disruption with regards to how that third party conducted their service, how significant would the impact how significant would that impact your business, right? So you just want to always be in a position where you do not have too much vendor concentration, because every business, that running a business is risky, right? And regardless of the size of the business, anything could happen in the macroeconomic environment that could turn the tide for an industry and create a negative waterfall for all of those that trade with that vendor, whether it's a bank, a packager, a supplier, whatever it is, right? So it just kind of drives home the point of making sure that you don't have too much tied up into one vendor. There's an old adage of don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And there are some instances where it does make sense to focus and to concentrate. But, when you're talking about something that can disrupt your business such to the point where you can't meet payroll, you can't get your product to your customers on time, there's an issue with your packaging where it significantly impacts your brand. These are all things where you really have to think about and evaluate your counterparty risk when you're doing business with a vendor. So you want to make sure that you diversify your cash, have multiple banking partners, diversify your suppliers, make sure that not one supplier has you so that if they have a disruption, if there's a disruption in the supply chain, or if they want to hike prices on you, or the macroeconomic environment forces them to hike prices on you, you're not in a position where there's only one person that you deal with and you can't do anything about whatever action they decide to take. Same thing goes for your shipping partners. If there's an issue, something happens to their fleet or their technology, and they can't deliver the service that you originally signed up for, you want to make sure that you're in a position where you can still operate your business. And just because that one vendor now has an issue, you then have an issue with your business. So it's just very important to make sure that you have diversified all counterparty risk, because you never know. Business is tricky. Business is risky. And things happen in the macroeconomic environment constantly that can impact an industry, and it can create a negative waterfall, a negative situation, such that a lot of people are impacted by the downfall of one business. We saw this in the case of the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. And that was a little bit different because it was kind of like a systemic situation because of the mortgage situation in our economy. But when you look at what's going on with Silicon Valley Bank, it could create a systemic risk because so many businesses concentrated all of their cash in deposits with the bank. Now, there's a lot of technical reasons as to why this occurred, right? Because the Fed is raising interest rates and it's impacting the markdown of the portfolio and the balance sheet with the bank, right? And that, these are things that are completely out of the control of the founders, right? You have all different types of tech companies that hold their deposits with this bank. So the fact that the interest rates were rising, it's probably not top of mind for a founder of a company thinking, oh, my bank has a lot of loans on its balance sheet that can be significantly impacted by the Fed raising rates, right? That's not something you're thinking about when you're running an agro-tech startup, right? But this is a great example that because of the fact that there's so many unknowns that you might not be thinking about, it's very important to make sure that you stay diversified in your business. You don't concentrate too much of how your company can do business with one trade partner. Because if anything were to happen with that trade partner, you have a falling out with that trade partner, anything, you could put yourself in a position where you can no longer carry out your business as you typically do, right? So who knows what will take place or what will come about with this whole bank situation, if the feds will, bail them out, if another entity will come in and buy them out so that they can raise the cash necessary so that, all of their customers can meet their obligations. Who knows what will happen? But for me, the lesson here is to just make sure that you diversify your counterparty risk. You just never know what can happen. You don't want to be in a situation where then you got to tell your customers that you can't conduct business because somebody that you do business with is out of bounds, right? So hopefully that was helpful. Appreciate you guys for tuning in as always, and I'll see you on the next episode.